Knight h played one e4, which is his main move. Knight h is a very aggressive player. He's mainly playing e4 and plays the rule of pairs and very aggressive lines in general, just going for kingside attacks. And Vincent went for c5. He's playing the Najdorf usually. But Knight h knew Vincent very well, as I said before, and he tried knight c3. He was not interested in seeing what Vincent knows in the Najdorf, because Najdorf is one of the most solid openings out there, and it's really hard to get the game going from the Najdorf. And then he just stick to the closed Sicilian, which is not that big of a theoretical debate, but it's more about plans and strategical ideas that you have to know. So Knight h is very aggressive, but the game starts a bit slow, but then he's preparing a nice attack. So Vincent plays a6. The main idea of this move is that after knight f3 you can play d6, and after d4 you can transpose to the Najdorf. So that's the point of a6. And on knight g2 e2, he played d6, as you can see already. Vincent is fine with the transposition to the Najdorf, but Knight h had other ideas, played a4, which is actually not that common, but then will just transpose to the main stuff, and on knight f6 you could actually still play d4 and get a Najdorf Sicilian. But it's just normal Najdorf, so Knight is just went for the closed Sicilian setup with g3. And Vincent played knight c6, bishop g2, and he chose the e6 setup. You can also play with g6. That's also something very popular, which I've done myself a couple of times. Why we play something like d3, castle, h3, and then black is usually trying to switch to some queenside play while you are trying to attack him. So something very, very normal would have been something like that, bishop e3, b4, and then knight b1. So that's a topical position of the closed Sicilian. Black's attacking on the queen side, then white is going for the king side. But okay, Vincent chose the e6 setup, which is a bit different, we'll see. White castle, bishop e7, he played f4. Maybe he could still have played d4, because knight h has been played the g3 Najdorf before. But he was not interested in that, because the a4 is not always played, and he just wanted to go for f4 and kingside aggressiveness. Castles by black and d3. Rook b8, h3, everything very standard so far. Knight d7. He's trying to reroute his knight and prepare b5, because b5, it's worth noticing that would allow e5, because you attack knight and then also the c6 knight is under pressure, so this is already very good for white. So he plays knight d7 in order to prepare b5. And here knight h plays g4, which Vincent is answering with h6, which I don't think it's the best move from a practical standpoint, because h6 is it might be a very ugly weakness that white can use. For example, Agard used to call this in his books to be a hook, because at some point you can maybe play h4 and g5 and get to the king much faster. If the pawn was on h7, for example, you have to play h5, g5, g6, and still is not that clear. So h6, I mean, I'm not sure. I can understand that it can work, but I think it's really hard to play in an actual game. So knight h1 for the very normal looking knight g3. That's usually the plan when you play with knight g2. Sometimes you can play f4 and knight f3 directly, but when you play with knight g2, the idea is to get the knight to g3. Also, the king is not feeling unsafe, and the knight might be quite annoying from something like h5, for example. So here Vincent plays bishop h4, trying to attack the knight and also stop a bit white's initiative on the kingside, and after knight c2 he plays b5 going for some counterplay, king h2, b4, bishop to e3, a5, and we have a queen to d2 here, everything very standard. Now white is preparing to maybe play g5, may play f5. The whole point is that black will try some activity on the queen side, as I said before, and white is just going to also, get his rook ready for the attack. And basically you can see that every piece of white is concentrating to the king side. So Vincent plays bishop is a6, already threatening to play c4 and create some counterplay. And Arkady is ready for that and mates it would be 3. After which Vincent played queen s7. Very normal so far. Rook g1, preparing to launch an attack on the g file later. Here Vincent plays rook b to c8 because the rook from b8 was quite pointless now that the pawn was fixed on b4. So now he will try to focus to deliver the c pawn. Pawn never in the future. He can get c4 in good conditions, then he might be even better because if white is not getting a real attack going, then he might get just pushed on the queen side, and the c file might be quite dangerous. So if the c file opens, that can be just a game over for white. So rook a f1, preparing the attack. The rook can be useful on the f file later in the game. So here Vincent plays the move g6. That again, I am not sure if it's the best move that you should play here, but okay, it's really smart if you play it correctly. Again, these g6 and h6 move I don't think are bad, but you have to follow up them in the right way. So actually, if you try f5 here, I believe the point was to play g5 by Vincent. And then you get the nice e5 square, and the bishop's quite nicely blocking the attack. So knight h here tried e5, which is basically an improved version of f5. So e5 is a very, very interesting pawn sacrifice that you have to be really well prepared against, because if this works, then your position might just get very close to collapsing pretty soon, because the idea of e5 is de. Let's say you accept the pawn sack with d, and now white's not going to recapture. That would not be great. I believe maybe just g5 here is good, and then the e5 pawn is going to fall. So on d5, white has a very strong thematical reply. He just plays f5. This is very well known, and it's very usually seen in the benoni, that when you have the pawn center and play e5, d5, f5 is usually just very bad. For black, difference is that this bishop's not blocked on g7 and is on h4 and is a bit more active. And here black could have tried g5. And okay, this is not that bad, but still, it gives white the h5 squares after something like 94 f6, attacking the queen and getting the pawn closer to the king. Black has to play queen to d8, and white has to get rid of the h4 bishop because he's restricting his pieces, and plays bishop to f2. Bishop has to take, because if you're allowed to take on h4, then h6 you're just getting mated. So he takes, rook takes, and now I believe this position is quite complicated if you play the best way with black, the best engine moves. But I think this should be just much easier to play with white, because you can maybe play bishop e4, but also you have the very simple plan of going knight g3, knight e4, and sec1 g5. And then just mate, or you can also play simply h4 and chip away black's queen side. So I believe this is This is, yeah, practically much easier to play for white. So in general, I advise you when you prepare for a game, just, try to find position that suit your style. And you shouldn't really care about the engine evaluation that much if it's equal or it's slightly better, because even if the position is equal on the engine, if you are very, very well prepared for the plans and strategical ideas, and you find that position very easy to play and you don't have to spend a lot of time, then it might be much more useful than a slight advantage on the engine, but you are pretty confused at the board. So yeah, this idea with d5 and f5, you have to learn from this game. This is a very, very typical and thematical idea, so keep that in mind. If you are planning to go for this kind of the closest Sicilian type of positions, the advantage of playing like this with white is that blacks got only 2 or 3 setups. This one with e6 and also the fianchetto that I showed you. Maybe you can try at some point combine fianchetto with d5, but that's a bit risky and not that frequently played. But okay, e5, and now black played d5. Being aware of that, and on f5 here Vincent came up with the greedy knight c takes on e5, which was quite a big mistake, because here, as I said, g6 and h6 are not bad moves, but here he should have found a g5 move, which might seem really ugly, but is actually the way to go on this position and is leading to very complicated play. After something like knight h5, now you take the pawn. The big difference is that white's no longer available to take on h6, and after something like bishop f2, rook takes f2, white might get in some f6 or knight g3 with h4. This was very complicated positions. The engines are not really helping because, engines is always crazy about material, so if you'll just give the engine a pawn, it's going to scream advantage. But I think in this case, between two humans players, this was a very playable position for white and very interesting one. And Vincent should have gone for this, because what happened in the game was just getting out of control after knight c5, white just took on h6, he's threatening to take the exchange after rook e8, fg6, fg6. Fg6 is forced. If you try to take with knight, the knight h5 and g5 is coming. So this was already much better for white. So fg6, and here knight h came up with the g5 move, which was a very strong one. And here Vincent played, again a small inaccuracy, played knight f7, bishop g3 was better to get rid of the bishop, and after knight f7, white could have tried a very, very interesting exchange sacrifice in this position. He could have played rook takes f7 and queen takes rook f1, and then just go for a compensation with h4. Because after a move such as queen d6, let's say pinning down the knight on g3, you just go h5, gh5, g6, and let's say, why not just take the knight with h4? White is going to simply sacrifice it, and after something like queen e7, rook f7, he's just winning the queen, because if queen d8, queen h6 mates, so after you win the queen, is just a game over, because black's king is so exposed. Something like queen f7, g takes, king takes, and then some queen move to like f4, and then queen d6, get to these pawns, and just starting to collect some stuff. So bishop g3 should have been tried, but still white had some interesting ideas. But he played knight f7, after which knight h came up with some brilliant play. He played queen f4, and now bishop g3 was not so great, because white simply can take back with the knight, or also with the queen with knight f4 ideas. So he took on h6, but the point was now that he actually took the bishop, not the knight. And black's got two option. If knight f5 now, you can try to pause the video and see. You can just take on f5 with the rook and something like gf5, simply knight f5 and takes bishop d5 is just taking the queen, because king d7 is going to run into queen h6 mate. So knight f7, now it comes the calculation part here. What do you guys want to play? You have an easier move than knight play, but it's quite hard to figure out during the game that knight f4, queen g5, and you exchange queens, and this is actually winning. But apparently black's king doesn't really have any moves, and bishop d5 seems to be a huge threat with, yeah, some ideas to play for the mate without queens. So this is not how humans play. But humans go for romantic attacks, just go for sacrifices, as knight did. He played knight h5, going for full attacking mode. The threat is to play knight f6 and then just mate. So after gh5 he came up with a brilliant move again. You can try to guess it, to post the video. One for rook f6, and the idea is basically just queen h5 and rook g6, queen h5, and this is just yeah, black's is getting a bit offside with the pieces. The bishops, they are not helping, and white's got a lot of pieces on the king side. And he had to take, if you play something like knight f8, the calculation process should be something like queen takes h5, and after he goes knight h8, okay, he's trying to get rid of g6, but knight f4 simply comes in with knight d5 ideas, bishop b7, protecting it, and now you just play simple positional chess. Even though you are a piece down, black is completely tied down to defense, just rook f1, queen g7, h4, and yet bishop h3 is coming. Black is going to drop material eventually, and the knight h7, there's knight e6, and gf6 is simply winning material after something like queen to h7 and queen to g4 check. And if queen g6, for example, then you can at least take the queen and play f7 and collect the rook. And on knight g6, yeah, just f7 and take the queen with queen f5 should be just completely winning. Now something like knight fe5 and simply knight f4. Attacking e6, knight f8, now you just collect the h5 pawn, bishop b7, rook e1, attacking the knight, and the knight ed7. Can even take one a6, but just rook h6, queen g7, knight g6 is really strong, and knight h7, just h4, preparing bishop h3. So c4, just knight f4, attacking e6, and knight f8, simply bc4, and black is simply losing, even though he's a knight up at the moment. He's almost in Zugzwang. So here is a really important tip, guys. When you are attacking, don't be desperate to see until the mate. If black's got no moves, then it doesn't really matter if you have like 2 pawns for the piece. You're just going to start collecting at some point. And yeah, the rest of the game went knight f6, gf6, queen d6, knight f4, king f8. And here knight could have actually played a very interesting move. Bishop takes d5. He played queen g3 in the game, but bishop d5 with the point at e d5, rook g8 is just a quick mate after queen g3. This is a very well-known pattern, the magnet sacrifice on g8, and the queen's comes with the mate on g7. But okay, he played queen g3, it's still completely winning, and after rook to d8, again he had the same thing with bishop d5, and queen g8 was a threat, so maybe he was scared in a time trouble that these shouldn't be that easily winning, because black's got rook and 2 pieces for the queen, but after queen e4, yeah, black should collapse pretty soon. And he played the more easier rook e1, and after e5, he just played knight e6, king e8, and knight takes c5, with queen g8 being a mating threat, and Vinci tried queen f6, but after knight g4, he's at least winning the queen, but after queen e7, just knight f6 with mate to follow after king f8, queen g8, so yeah, definitely take from this game that when you are attacking, you shouldn't be desperate to checkmate or get your material back immediately. You should just, if black has to place his pieces really badly in order to survive, then 2 pawns for the piece, so sometimes even 1 pawn can be enough compensation, and then at some point you will take more material eventually. So just If you feel like the sacrifice is working, then just go for it, don't